And this is on that.
Oh, this is that. Thank you. Stuck in $1,000. Yikes.
This is better.
Not too bad.
Echo cancels. So people can. No, that's okay.
We call the meeting to order. Mayor Levine is gone this evening, so I'll be taking over as his mayoral duties. Clerk Mackey, will you please note the roll?
Counselor Mraz? Counselor Jibbery? Yes. Counselor Levine?
Here,
Counselor Thronson?
Yep.
and I'll stand for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public forum, do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak tonight? That isn't under the appearance part of our agenda. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The following items will be enacted by one motion unless a counselor or citizen of the city of Keewatin requests that the item be considered separately. 5.1, approve the minutes of the June 28, 2023 council meeting. 5.2,
Okay.
approval of claims to be paid, public utilities, $81,376.09, and city, $68,860.29.
I would like items 5.1 pulled and 5.2 on the public utilities pulled.
Okay,
On 5.1, we have, when we had talked about, Billy attending the MMUA down in Duluth.
Mhm.
That was on the agenda as 5.3 and 5.4, not C and D. So if we could correct it to 5.3 and 5.4, which were pulled for the minutes instead of C and D. And then on the claims, on the public utility, I would like to pull utility systems and benchmark. There's 2 payments in there for each of them. I would like the council to sit down and have a meeting with them because of lots of stuff going on down there, and I want them to attend, and if they don't attend, they're not going to be getting their fee until we get some answers. And I don't know what the rest of the council feels, but I would like to do it before the next meeting on the 26th at 4.
does any other counselor have any questions or concerns on that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I guess we'll do these in 2 separate motions then. The first one would be to approve the minutes with the changes recommended by Councilor Johnson. Is there a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Motion by Johnson, supported by Jibbery, to approve the minutes with the changes recommended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The second motion will be on the claims to remove from the public utilities claims, the Utility Systems of America, $27,054.61, and Benchmark Engineering invoices totaling $11,060. And do we also need to, well, let's make a motion on that, I guess, because I have a question on the city code, so. Are there any questions on those two? Being pulled from public utilities. Is there a motion for those? For that?
I'll make a motion to pull both Utility Systems of America and Benchmark.
And I'll support it.
We have a motion by Councilor Johnson, supported by Councilor Jilly to pull Benchmark and Utility Systems. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And I just had a question on the claims for the city. So we have a check here going to the public utilities for the PFA request. Do we want to hold off on that one as well? Until we get the rest of,
Is that
The
the
other side.
14,000?
that's $52,114. That would be the money that came in. Do we want to just continue with that into the public utilities?
I think we could with that
Yeah,
one.
that one's,
Okay.
that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on the mowing assessments, do these normally all get put into savings? For the blight and the mowing, and do they get credited back to their departments or
Yes,
and stay in the general fund ever?
it's usually, we usually do one big motion. That all of the assessments, when we get it from the county at the end. And then we do one big motion where there's all the mowing assessments and then all of the blight assessments.
In
And then it'll be
utilities,
distributed back into the department.
utilities. too.
Yeah.
Okay, so it goes into savings then, is that how we do it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I just had a question on that. And then on the Rogers Online, the router should be built to the city garage. And then is the contract being split between everybody then? The $500? Between all departments for his contract? So he has, the invoice is $500 plus the router. It says with for garage. Okay. All right,
And then his invoice is to be split between all.
correct. Okay, is there a motion to approve the city invoices?
I'll make a motion to support the consent agenda as it stands with the city claims.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Okay, under Kansas. First up, we have Officer Kevin Ott, Grand Rapids Police Department. Welcome to the city of Keewatin, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks for having me, council. I have some handouts, maybe it'll help to follow along with what I'm talking about. And more to remind
Sure.
I brought 5.
Thank you.
My card's on the top. If you have any questions after tonight, feel free to call or. Once again, I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me. I'm the captain of Grand Rapids PD. I've been running the TDD grant for Itasca County for the last 6 years. We'll be going into our 7th year that I've coordinated it. Grand Rapids Police Department is the fiscal agent for the grant. So I'll kind of explain how that goes. But this is a PowerPoint. I wasn't sure what kind of technology I would have, so printed it out. The first sheet is 2021 crash statistics for Itasca County. You see kind of highlighted at the top, there's 308 DWIs that year, 434 crashes, 8 deaths, 1 alcohol-related deaths, 8 motor vehicle operation deaths. 4 of those were unbelted drivers. Second page ranks us 22 out of 87 counties as far as serious or what they say are the worst counties based on statistics and population. What TZD does is it focuses on tracking fatalities and serious injuries. And when we do enforcement for TZD, we focus on speed, impaired driving, seat belts, and distracted driving. Those are the four most dangerous things that a driver can do. So you can kind of see some of the statistics there. The rate per VMT, that's vehicle miles traveled, that's something that DOT puts together. But you can kind of see our average in Itasca County for the last year. Well, it's 2021. They're usually about a year behind getting on their statistics together. The next one is we're ranked 18th worst as far as impaired driving and fatalities over from 2017 to 2021. We had 10 drunk driving fatalities. We had 31 total fatalities in the county. And then it talks about serious injuries. There was 98 in that 5-year span. So in a total of 14, over 1,400 DWI convictions. Probably wondering like how this works as far as the grant goes and some reimbursement when Keewatin police officers work. So what I do is I have an Excel spreadsheet. I think you'll have like the fringe calculator if you're on the first one there. TZD will reimburse para, Medicare, workman's comp, and then they have the total fringe. So like Keewatin Police Department, total fringe is 29.12%. What varies in there, para and Medicare are the same throughout the state. Workman's comp varies with each municipality. Are there any questions on that? So the next sheet is, this would be a second quarter. So TZD runs October 1st through September 30th. So the first quarter is October, November, December. So the second quarter would be January, February, March. So you see on the one, Amber Jackson, where we had special detail for Super Bowl, their driving enforcement, which we appreciate her going out there and working. So she worked on February 11th and February 12th. With her being at part-time, she gets paid at straight time here for $22 an hour. So what I put is the regular rate, because it automatically puts it in at time and a half. So it's $14.67 at time and a half, and $22.01, which is the rate that she paid per hour. There's also added on that 29.12% fringe. You can see the reimbursement under the DWI hours, and then at the bottom right would be $625.22 for those 3 shifts, which is $22. The mileage, TZD, being part of the TZD enforcement grant is a match that each city is required to, donate match hours or mileage. So what we do with Keewatin is we donate the mileage. We do configure that, so the next page would be the state rate this year was 62.5 cents per mile. Amber would track how many miles she did in that shift. And then that gives us our match payment of $253.13, which is ultimately what we're saying, we're donating the opposite traffic safety for being part of the grant. The next pages are officer activity reports that I get. So these are the 3 shifts that she had worked in the second quarter. One being on February 11th, one being on February 12th, and one being on March 17th. Those are just kind of her statistics for February 11th. She worked 8 hours, did 13 stops. We require officers to get at least 1 contact an hour, unless there's a circumstance. So like Amber on her March 17th shift, she did 10 hours, and she had an average of 0.5 stops per hour. And she explains in the comments there that roads were slippery and snow. She also assisted with the DWI with the state trooper. Kind of going back to the reimbursement for the city of Keewatin, so you're seeing on the prior Excel sheets that it was $625.22 for the 22 hours that you worked, the $22 an hour with the fringe added. This is what I submit to the state of Minnesota, it's through e-grants. So you'll see like Keewatin PD, $625.22. Mileage expenses, it says $253.13. That's the match that Keewatin provides for PZD. Each agency that works enforcement all donate their mileages. It's not unique to Keewatin. Next page is just kind of our enforcement calendar. Like I said, it starts in October. Halloween and deer hunting optional DWI enforcement. I think throughout the state, there's some agencies that, get a lot of involvement with officers on deer hunting. We struggle up here most of the time. Officers are either working a regular shift or out in the deer stand. Then it goes through, our deadliest day is typically the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. The reason for that is oftentimes kids come back from college, meet up with high school friends, high school pals, and consume too much. It's one of the deadliest things that we have in this game. Then we run weekends through December, do the Super Bowl special optional. St. Patrick's Day is an optional one that we do. That, like Amber's third shift, the March 17th shift was special St. Patrick enforcement. We actually did it across the county. So. April's distracted driving, so we kind of get into what our four things that I talked about was distracted, seatbelt, speed, and impaired driving. April, we focus on distracted driving. DWIs kind of goes throughout the summer, starting in May through September. Seatbelts, we do end of May, early June every year. This month is speed enforcement. And August into September is extra DWI enforcement. There's one special day where we attempt to do move over violations, where the car needs to move into the left lane if they can. If there's a traffic stop on the side, typically that's done by two officers working together or with the state patrol. And then seatbelts and child restraints and the grant cycle year in September. The last page is kind of my budget for the year. This is since Grand Rapids Police Department at the top, but it's really for the whole county. You can see the numbers there, what we get in each, like impaired driving, seatbelt speed, move over, distracted, and then this year they have some special projects, specifically like recently when I contacted Chief Whitney and Chief Messig and Nashwauk, and that's some July 4th events, like, hey, if you guys have available officers, we can do extra DWI enforcement, but they're going to do that for parades and events. Special project like the Happy Rodeo, the sheriff's office will get extra hours to try to do their training there, things like that. That's what that's for. Pedestrian, there's nothing. Pedestrian enforcement is, or TZD is pretty much limited to the 5-county metro area. So we don't have pedestrian enforcement here. The other things, dispatch administration and corrections assistance. There are things, last year I put in for LiDAR or radar, which that's a piece of equipment. This next year I put in for PDPs, DMT training, EVOC, which is our driver's training that we're required to do. I put in extra money for that, which is new this year, hoping to get some of those dollars. I spoke to Chief Whitney and see if he needed a radar right now. Not this year, but it could be next year where we might need something like that. So we try to use those funds and get equipment to our partnering agencies, which are Keewatin, Nashwauk, River, Coleraine, Colby, and that's what we use the sheriff's office. I guess, I'd like to thank the city of Keewatin for supporting TZD. I think it's important grant to be a part of. The enforcement part is important. Chief Whitney has been great about, encouraging officers to work when they can, even sometimes there's limited resources. But in the 6 years that I've done here, Keewatin's always been a great partner. So I appreciate you guys' support and support for, getting us to lower deaths. As of July 7th, statewide, we're at 169. Last year was 188. Task County only had one death so far this year, which is 0 is what we're focusing on, but 1 is better than some of the years where we've had 8 or more. So, I don't know if you guys have any questions, I certainly want to try to answer them. And you have my card, and I'm available. I'll certainly get back to you.
Does any council have any questions for Sarah?
Just a comment, if I could. Well, thank you, for presenting. And then I just had a question. So you said statistics usually come out when?
They're usually like the 2022 are probably out now.
Okay,
They usually finalize them in May. What happens is, they have to go through some failed reviews when it comes down to their statistics.
understand.
So, for instance, like in Grand Rapids, we had a fatality a few years ago where a passenger lived and the driver had intentionally tried to kill them both, unfortunately. That doesn't come up as a traffic-related death when it's assumed or found to be a suicide.
Gotcha.
Medical-related deaths, which is likely, I think, what has happened this year in Task County for a traffic death, typically does not come down as a fatality in the statistics.
Okay.
Because I guess presumably that happened before.
Okay.
So some of those things are why there's a longer delay. There's a ton of statistics that come in each time we do a crash investigation, or most times. We have to go into the state system, it's called MinCrash, and we log in. So Chief Whitney does it, your officers do it, Grand Rapids, everyone does it. And then OTS, Office of Traffic Safety, they get together and they pull these statistics together and they're constantly changing.
Okay.
It usually takes some time.
Perfect.
I could probably get that today.
Yeah,
I
and
didn't have it for this bill.
no, and that's perfect. And the only reason why I ask is that's a good explanation, but for in the past, and Chief Whitney always does a nice job of explaining it, but residents typically ask for, like, what is this program, which Chief Whitney has explained, and then statistics. Like, this speaks to me because it's numbers and it's quick. So it's a nice thing for residents to look at and be like, hey, the TZD program is a good thing. And not that they're bucking that, but then if you look at this, then you can kind of see why. And that's why I was curious when I saw that 3 and the higher numbers, like what would it be as you go down? Because I'm a numbers person. So, and I think other people like to see that too. So it's a good PowerPoint to share with residents. So, but we can certainly ask Chief Whitney to get a copy from you and as it
Yeah, I
comes.
have it with,
Okay, perfect,
yeah, that's just the beginning of it, so.
perfect. Thank you.
I did have one question. So Itasca County is ranked 18. How many counties are in the city?
87, yeah.
And I'll say historically, been here in Rapids for over 15 years. Historically, they used to have a top 13, like worst. So those 13 counties would get extra dollars more than what the grant would give. They don't do that anymore. But 10 years ago, they used to. And Itasca County was always within like 12 to 18. Like, it's something that we need to improve on here. I think you know, with TZD, you have education, you have engineering, enforcement. I think some of the engineering things that they're doing on the highways are making it safer. A lot of people hate roundabouts in certain communities, but they do eliminate the, you know, the head-on T-bone crashes and more of a side crash. So those improvements are being made. You know, Grand Rapids has a roundabout lane, and Nashville, I made some improvements, or, you know, on the highway, there's some improvements there because that was some dangerous areas. Like if you drive through the whole Cologne, those are kind of engineering things where they have kind of the signs, you know, when you get to the bottom of the hill there, you know, the flashing lights and the crosswalks and stuff, to try to improve on our numbers.
Good.
And since COVID, like, across the nation, speeds went crazy. You know, officers were, you know, many agencies were advising when we go to calls, you know, and we don't do traffic enforcement, or much traffic enforcement because of the pandemic. And across the nation, speeds and triple digits all over.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next up is Joseph Palala, JPJ Engineering.
Where do I want to start? When I started, I stopped here and talked about a little bit in regards to the lead and copper rule that's been adopted by the United States EPA, and it's trickled down to the lead service inventory requirement for communities that have public water systems. So Keewatin does have a public water system. And part of the mandate is by October of 2024, all communities need to forward on their inventory of their water system and in regards to what components have lead components. So that's a regulatory mandate that has trickled down through the government, we'll say it that way. And in Minnesota, the Department of Health has taken that lead because they are the ones that administer and permit for the water lines for communities. So with that, it's very interesting. This is one of the federal mandates that have come through that there's actually money to make it. They're actually providing some kind of funding. Other times there is no funding. It's just you will do it. So with this, is the Department of Health has put out a notice to all the communities, and it opened on June 20th to apply for funding assistance to help you and assist you complete your inventory. Now there's 3 different components to it. There's a category A component, which is basically your document review, your record drawings, when stuff is put in and stuff like that, the permits, what do they have. There's a category B items, which is the visual inspection. You know, you visually inspect the water line coming into people's houses and document. And then at the end of category B items is when you submit in your spreadsheet to the Department of Health. The Department of Health has put together a spreadsheet that has more columns in it than you need to know, say it that way. But they're trying to get a comprehensive feel for how much lead is out there. You know, nobody's ever tracked it in the past. I mean, it's one of those things. And there's some magic dates that are part of it. Basically, if any part of your system is prior to 1985, there's a strong suspicion you have lead or lead components in your water system. And that's what this is all about, is trying to identify the magnitude of the problem, magnitude of the issue for Keewatin. Now, if you've replaced stuff and done work since 1985, that would not be a concern on those ones. But if when you replace the stuff in the street, you only replace it up to the property line, there could be a potential from the curb stop or the property line to the person's house that may or may not contain lead. And that's what this whole thing is to try to get a feel for. Excuse me. Because they don't have, none of this is going to address what's going on inside people's houses. It's just for the public water system. The stuff in people's houses, that's their own responsibility. So with this program is, I've been telling communities that if you're gonna apply for funding assistance based on communities like Keewatin, you can pick either category A, category B, or category C. Category C is coming up with a plan to address any lead that you may have identified in A and B. So on this first little go around, community like Keewatin, if you're gonna apply for funding assistance, I'd apply for funding assistance under category B. If you can't apply for all three of them, this is one or the other. Category A is very, I call it very simple and easy. Like, what documents do you have? I'll say it this way, a lot of communities I go to, they don't have any. You know, they were all held by XYZ engineering company that went out of business 20 years ago. So that's the nature of that. And that's the biggest thing is part of the application, I think it's like 3 pages. I have to look at it again. But there's certain firms that have, I guess you want to say pre-qualified with the Department of Health to get on their master contract list. And as part of the application is, one of the selection parts is, do you have a preference from an engineering firm to work with? You know, and with that, you can sort of choose. If you choose no, then the Department of Health will assign an engineering firm to work to complete your inventory if they approve your funding request. Now, the way the program is working through the Department of Health is the Department of Health would contract with the engineering firm, and the city of Keewatin would have nothing to do with the contract. There would be some assistance in coordinating a couple things, but the contract would be between the firm and the Department of Health to complete your inventory. So that's another nice thing, it's not money out of your pocket to do this. So that in a nutshell is the program. The deadline to apply is July 20th. And the application isn't overly hard, probably about the hardest thing for a lot of communities, at least the office staff people, is what's your public water ID number? You know, we can look that up pretty easy. And
You provided that for us.
did I? Okay. I couldn't remember. But main thing is, why I'm here is, you know, JPJ is one of the approved firms. Benchmark is not. I know Benchmark's here, I know Jeremy, I know Alan. And I actually talked to them because I don't want to come in here and say, get rid of Benchmark, you should hire us. I'd rather work with you than have you guys sort of roll the dice with whoever the Department of Health is going to assign to you. Say it that way. And we're located right at the road gate. So,
Okay.
and then mainly to answer any questions that you may have on this whole lead service question.
Well, I do have a couple questions. First off, I would like to look at the application so we all kind of have an idea what they're gonna request from us just to get it into the books with the Minnesota Department of Health. But then on the second one, what is the testing that you would be doing? Is it, because the ones that are in the homes, as we all know, we're not gonna be touching them.
We're not part of the whole, this is just the first phase of just trying to get an inventory. So there really is no testing. It's looking at your documents, saying, okay, this whole neighborhood was put in 1945. This is sort of the standard materials they use. if you have the record drawings, this is what it is. Based on that, based on, discussion with your public works utility people, what they've observed in this neighborhood in the past.
As far as what do you mean observe?
Well, the water main,
Okay,
if it's a cast iron water main,
okay,
more than likely at every joint,
right.
there's lead in the joints.
That's what I wasn't sure what you
Yeah.
meant by.
So it's just that's part of the document.
Mm-hmm,
That's category A. Category B stuff is you actually physically look at it. The line coming up out of the floor for your water, and the water meter. Is that line steel, copper, plastic, lead? There's a lot of them that are lead. But it's just, you document that stuff. But if you look at that spreadsheet that the Department of Health has, there's also other questions that when you're visually looking at that, they're asking you, did you look at the other piping in the house? Is the other piping steel, copper, lead, plastic? Just as a cursory, so they're sort of fishing for a lot of information. Because nobody's ever comprised this before to see what people actually have. Mainly is, if they turned on the tap and the water came, people really didn't care.
but I'm not understanding how the funding is gonna be then used, because you would go to each of the residents' homes of the older ones from 1912, and you know what I'm saying,
Yep,
not the
basically
newer
all of them,
ones.
we'd have to do some kind of documentation on each place.
Okay,
I'm not gonna say we're gonna be able to get 100% of them.
yeah, because
Because some
people aren't gonna
people
let
just-
you in, yeah,
They just don't want to do
interesting,
it.
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
And so it's trying to get as much information as you can, because this is just sort of the first
phase,
phase of this whole thing. Because then the category C stuff is, okay, you've identified, say, I'm gonna say 20
mhm,
potential lead lines in the community. Okay, what are you gonna do to address them? I mean, it could be anywhere from, as soon as funding becomes available,
that's what I was gonna
we'll address
ask,
it.
yeah,
So then you sort of throw it back on them.
mhm,
Other plans are as problems arise or anything else, we'll take care of them at the time. But at least we'll know we have something, and it may be that you go, okay, we got 20 of them at $5,000 a pop, it's gonna be $100,000.
mhm.
So then you go, okay, more than likely, the way the emphasis is going, there's gonna be, I'm not gonna say special dedicated funding, but there's gonna be sort of preference points when you apply for funding. And I don't know how familiar everybody is with PFA funding and scoring and the sheets and stuff, but your project, they have scoring that you rate your project. If you have any kind of project that improves the water system, you get 7 points. And then if it meets other criteria, you keep getting points. Historically, the funding line has been right around between 10 and 12 points. You gotta have that many points in order to qualify for PFA, preferred funding. So it's to help weed out, we'll say it this way, the wish list by some communities say, well, we'll just go to PFA and they'll give us money. Well, if your project is not, what do you wanna say, urgent enough, you don't get points.
Mhm.
Where they may, and nobody knows where this is gonna go, but if it's a lead service line project, there's been some special dedicated funding that has started working its way through the works.
Yeah.
To where you can apply and say, hey, we have a lead service need of $100,000 to address these deals. Then it depends on how much funding is there and how it's distributed out. You might have a $100,000 request. City of St. Paul might have a $50 million request.
Right,
So nobody knows that next phase.
mhm,
They're just trying to get a handle on what the magnitude is to start.
understand, yeah,
So,
Beginning stage.
but with this, the Department of Health is the one that would hold the contract to do the inventory. And then like the city of Keewatin would just work with whatever assistance needs to be, like, you know, who all, you know, what's the address and name on all the services? You know, who do you bill each month? You know, stuff like that, that would assist in getting at least the preliminary list of all the services. I need some
Any other
questions.
Well, I have a couple, just if I could just ask for, yeah. So just so I understand correctly, because so this is just the exploration kind of stage, information gathering, so,
Initial
which is why the grant is such a low amount, because in my mind, I'm typically going 10 steps ahead.
Yep.
So when you get this and you assess this and say, it says, just say in theory, everyone in Keewatin needs to be replaced, okay? Is there gonna be more grants coming along, and is that
That's
what you're
what-
anticipating?
Well, we'll say it this way, that's the current, and I'm gonna say it this way, administration's indication.
Okay,
You know, because I'll just say if Joe Biden came out and directed the EPA, says we gotta get this handled. You know, so that's how high it's gone up and
Yeah.
so I don't care what you're doing.
No,
One
and-
thing or the other, but it's just one of those things where that has been one of the emphasis, you know, because it's a lot like the lead paint thing.
yep,
You know, and a lot of this has been building ever since the big case of Flint, Michigan. You know, to where they started asking, you know, how much of a problem is it?
yeah. Well, and the reason I ask is just, like I said, I mean, forward thinking, this potentially could be a huge project. I mean, it's a huge undertaking because
Potentially, yeah.
potentially, I mean, this is an old town. So I think one could assume that there's many pipes that probably would meet that requirement.
Yep.
And so when you start digging up roads and, you know, and it's mandated, right? So this is part of,
It's mandated to have the inventory.
to have the inventory.
Yep.
And then once you discover, because I think that that's a wonderful thing. But once you explore and you discover, you have a responsibility to fix, right?
Well,
I would think within reason and quickly.
within reason. And-
Right?
And that's where the whole replacement plan comes in.
Yeah,
Because even if you have, I'm gonna say lead components in your system.
Yep.
I don't know how much you know about the water system, but there's certain chemical stuff in your water. And anybody that, I'll say this way, anybody that has an old house with steel lines,
Mhm.
they may have a 1-inch line coming in there to their house, but they still may have decreased water pressure. It's because over time, the water lines actually develop a coating on the inside from the stuff in the water.
Mhm.
Well, if your water doesn't really change components that much, the chemical, that coating stays in there. That's what happened in Flint, Michigan, is they went from a groundwater source to a surface water source. Changed the chemical compounds. The chemical composition started eating that coating in the pipelines, and then it ate into the lead, which transferred it down the system.
gotcha.
So all because you identify lead doesn't mean it's something you need to address tomorrow.
Well, and I want to be just clear. I think that that's wonderful to do that. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying like, hey, don't look
Yeah.
because we don't. No, I think it's wonderful.
But
I
it's
just want to
all-
know how it phases out because it could potentially start from investigating exploration,
Yeah.
you identify it, and then before you know it, we're ripping the whole town apart, getting at these pipes. And so I think it's just good for the people to know. And
And it's the idea to give people an idea of what they actually have.
yeah, exactly.
You know,
So,
because you may discover a couple blocks where the water main has lead.
Yep.
Just because of all the stuff, which would trigger, you know, applying to PFA for funding and going through the whole situation there and seeing how much of it is grants, how much loans, you know, putting the whole package together.
mhm.
And that's part of the replacement plan and, cost evaluation.
Gotcha.
Because at the end of the day, it's gonna be, okay, Keewatin has a $2 million need. You know, how are we gonna address this?
Yep.
You know, so you got 2 million here, you got 3 million there, you know,
Yep.
at the end of the day, it could be $1 billion in Minnesota alone,
Mhm.
easily, you know, one way or the other. Well, I'll say it this way, another community that I'm the engineer for, Sturgeon Lake, they have no lead. Their whole system was put in between 2007 and 2010. They have no lead in their system at all, but they still need to complete the inventory,
I think it's good, so,
you know, but it's just.
thank you.
You know, that's why I'm here is to answer any questions that you may have that I know the answer to. But
Yeah.
at least if you're pursuing funding, July 20th is the deadline.
Perfect.
Councilman Ross, do you have any questions? I just had one comment. You know, the state allotted us, was it 8,000 or 12,000 or? So is that used, what is that money used for? Just
What
for
money is
the-
that?
The legislature did allot every city an X amount of dollars for this.
For lead? I don't know anything about that.
Okay, I'd have to look it up on
Yeah.
on the website.
Yeah. I don't know of any dedicated funding to communities for this lead inventory.
So you're getting paid by the Department of Health?
If the Department of Health approves your application, then the contract would be between a firm like us and the Department of Health.
Okay.
There's like 12 firms that are, on that master contract list.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Is anybody opposed to submitting an application right now, or should we just go for it and see what
I
happens?
say.
I say yes.
So then we'll take 8.1, which is adopt a resolution for the city clerk to apply for MBH grant and accept the funds for the city's lead service line inventory and technical assistance to be done before July 20th, 2023. Is there a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Jibril, supported by Morris. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks for coming.
And if you have any questions for me, you know, just reach out.
Okay.
I'll try to help you as much as I can, you know, and stuff, but the biggest thing is I just want everybody to address the issue. So you find out what we're looking at.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremy Schwartz, Benchmark, is not here tonight.
He is absent. However, I did speak with him and Chris Ismail of IRRB today. And we're moving forward on Jeremy preparing the grant for First Avenue and the O'Brien. We are able to use those additional invoices from Keewatin that were used in 2022. And this grant will be prepared this week.
Perfect.
And Alan is not here either.
However, if you look on the 6.4, Councilor Levine had asked what the Phase 2 grant awardment was, and it's $180,734. Our tentative connection date for startup on the sewage plant is right now July 20th.
And then I just had one question for the attorney. So because of this postponement of days upon weeks, how do we implement the fine?
So liquidated damages, the first thing we need to do is get the project to complete it, get it online. From there, there's a liquidated damage component that's likely involved or included within the contracts with contractors. We'll have to calculate the number of days that the project is, for lack of a better phrase, overdue. You multiply it by the liquidated damage provision, and that will give you the sum that's owed to the city by the contractors. From there, generally what happens is you go into some discussions and some meetings, but the liquidated damage amount can be set once the project is concluded. Until then, we've got to keep up with our end of the agreement, we've got to pay our bills and do things like that. And then basically it all shakes out at the end with that calculation.
So would that include the retainage? We would have to pay them retainage at the end, or would we be able to use that towards?
I think the final retainage we may be okay, but we want to keep up generally with our monthly bills. Because we don't want to be found in breach of the contract, because that can void some of the provisions that are there to protect us.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, unfinished business, employee review, we need to set a date. Mr. Attorney, when are you available?
I can be available, if it's in the evenings, I can be available most days except for, the second and fourth Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Other than that, my evenings are open. If it's during the day, it may get a little bit more complicated. But if we wanted to do it ahead of the next meeting, I'm definitely free for that time. And it may be something easier to schedule because the council may be getting together in any event.
What works for
I
everybody?
don't have my schedule. Let's just schedule.
This 4 o'clock on, or do you want to start earlier? 3? Because we will be having, we're gonna try and meet with Benchmark and them as well, so should we say 3 o'clock? Is that what-
I can't be here on the 26th. I'll be out of town for work, so.
Okay. And you're on the initial committee, right? No, you are. Okay, just, okay. Is that okay, or do you want to,
Yeah, that's fine.
or should we schedule it from your, what about the 19th?
19th, I'm available.
Is that a Wednesday?
That's
But you-
next Wednesday.
It'll work for me as well.
But you said you're not available the second and fourth Wednesday, right?
That one is, that's the third Wednesday, so I am.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's like 3 o'clock on the 19th.
Or do we want, we can do later? What time are you available, Tammy?
If you can do 4 on the 19th, I can make that.
4 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion to set a special meeting for employee review on Wednesday, July 19th at 4 p.m.?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilor Mars, supported by Councilor Judy to set a meeting for the employee review on July 19th at 4 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Who is this review for?
For Eric, I believe, right?
Are we not
Just
doing the
have
police
one.
department then? That got hired in February, they haven't been up for review.
I have a
So I'm-
schedule.
Yeah,
I have a schedule for the reviews. I can provide that for you.
I think
Okay.
Eric's was June, actually,
so
so.
I'm trying
we
to
haven't
get
been
his
able
in
to
and then,
schedule.
his 2-year,
So,
but we did the 6 months on the other guys.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying,
Yep.
and the police
Yeah.
department hasn't been there, so it didn't make sense to me, I wasn't following it. But I didn't know there was a schedule, so, all right.
Do you want to do 7.3 first, or do you want to talk about the animals ordinance?
Up to you.
Okay, well, we could do the animal ordinance, clerk passed out, something from Grand Rapids. Kind of a one paragraph that we could implement into our current ordinance, I'm guessing. If everyone's had a chance to look at that. Or are we still thinking of other options?
Can I comment?
Councilor Jordan?
Yeah, I do, because I don't know, like, I like the way that this one is written. It's very short and to the point. But I wonder, like, I did like this part. The permission part. Was that just assume that that's part of it?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
it is.
Okay, all right. Because I think that that's super important to have neighbors' involvement in the process. And of course, Chief Whitney's input as well, considering he is the person that enforces. I think it's
Chief Whitney, you have any comment on chickens in town? What is your feelings on this?
Well, when it first came up, I thought, like, well, hey, it's up to you guys, and I'll try to enforce whatever you come up with, but if it,
is gonna be changed and there's gonna be something allowed with chickens. It definitely, like with a variance process, the neighbors should get input. And, there should be structured, like you gave certain things a lot. Can't be, has to be so far from a neighboring structure, like, what, I haven't seen the Grand Rapids ordinance or anything.
Oh.
But,
I didn't say anything about lot size.
If you're on concept.
I think they
And
even,
it says 25, one chicken per 2,500 square feet of property.
Which I think, what does that equal?
That's basically 7,500 square feet, right, total for three. So if you have 100 foot by 25 foot lot, that's three chickens.
Well, that would be
You wouldn't
one.
be able to have them. Right?
Most-
That's only-
most-
something like this is good, I mean, I definitely think with the, get a permit from the city to do it, and
Just the rest of that, if you want to take a look at
it has to be reviewed and approved by a zoning or whoever.
Well, and I think we did talk about it at our zoning meeting on Monday. I think that end of it would be more of the building, so they would have to, we'd have to come up with a plan on what size the buildings would have to be in the ordinance and things like that. As
Yeah,
far as this part would be more of the city. So I don't know,
no roosters definitely.
there's no other,
Can have 30 of them, I mean, definitely, what if you have this 30 or whatever the square footage parameter is?
yes, 2,500.
Don't want it to get nuts, and neighbor input is great, and, whatever it is, you get a license for it.
And I'd like to see an annual license,
Mhm.
because then they'd get it checked and it doesn't have an annual on it, but.
Yeah, give us some authority to inspect it, make sure you don't have 20 chickens in there, or whatever, take a look around, and whatever you guys come up with, I'll do our best to enforce.
And so how big of a coop are we talking? For one chicken, how big would it have to be?
Generally, there's not a specific size that's assigned to the coops, but
Okay,
what there is language within the ordinances that provide that the coops have to be appropriately sized for the number of chickens or animals that are being kept, and that there has to be appropriate safety equipment and heat sources for colder months. It becomes a lot more involved than it seems on its face.
right. And I know we talked about inspection by the electrical inspector and having them come in,
We got a ramshackle one bird now,
Yeah.
2 years ago.
So,
Yeah, it's, you wanna make sure the welfare of the birds too. No animal cruelty going on.
I guess, I'm not sure, we can start with Counselor Thronson, what are your feelings? Are you for doing this or not, or?
Well, it's definitely not ready to, go yet. We have to get a lot of stuff.
But do we want to put the time and effort into it and then say, no, we don't want to do it, or are you?
I'm good to do it. I definitely don't have a problem with it, but there's a lot of stuff that has to be done.
Yeah, that's something I would wanna know, too. I mean, I would gladly help in crafting this ordinance and stuff, but if it's just gonna get shot down.
Right, it doesn't
I-
pay
I-
to continue with it? We put time and money into it if we're not going to, if in the end we say no. So I'm just asking.
I like the Grand Rapids with the input, but I feel like the Red Wing one is extremely detailed. So if you can somehow combine the two, I think that would be mine. I feel like the Red Wing one kind of spells it out, what you can have, what you can't have.
How many
Where the Grand
signs?
Rapids, yes, well, the Grand Rapids one asks permission from the neighbors, so, I mean, maybe that's just an addition that we can do. Yeah.
Counselor Jeffrey?
So the things that were just said already for this, this Red Wing one, it is very detailed, but it has all the way the building size, like how long, it has all that specific in here, which I think makes sense because like you already talked about, I do fear there being an overabundance of chickens in Keewatin, one in a little box, the other one in a garage. I just see it going south really quickly. I mean, it's very similar to our dog and our cat situation. So, but I also don't want to be so inflexible to like not allow people to do it. But it's one of those things, if you do it right, then have at it. But I think we have to be specific, because if we're not, we're going to get burnt. And this one, if we took the time to write it out, we would have, I think we have to be very concrete of this building size, this is your lot size, you have to ask permits. This one, every 2 years, a permit is good for 2 years. I mean, because it's, and then, like I said, most importantly, Chris, I mean, is it reasonable to you as the chief to be able to follow it? And because we know it's not always easy. So that's my
And
comment.
Okay, thank you. And the other comment I have is, are you gonna have time to do this? Are you gonna be able to be observing the town for chickens and people that are trying to put in?
Well, they-
Chickens and,
I'm guessing we'll have to apply, and as of right now,
well,
we
they
could,
don't.
and if we find out about it, we go. It's not like I'm going door to
Right.
door checking for chickens every year. Like if we, hey, so-and-so's got it, we respond to the call. If this is, something that is passed, and we keep track of who has the licenses and that, and I mean, all I can do is someone reporting it like, hey, so-and-so's got chickens, don't have a license, or check and make sure they have a license. I mean, that's my approach to enforcement.
Mhm.
Kind of a reactive one. I'm not gonna set out to look over the door and check and see if they're there, but from that on, make sure they're doing everything up to code of the ordinance and have a license, permit, whatever it is.
Counselor Johnson?
This is another thing too, that you have to utilize the meter reader going out where they can see what's going on, the same as the dogs and the cats. If you see a chicken coop, very easy to put in that meter reader, check and see if there's a permit. I mean, so you just have to be more aware of what's going on as far as what's going on, and ask the meter reader to, you know, to be a little more attentive and look in the yards. And then we're gonna know. You're gonna hear them, you're gonna notice the food around, same as the dogs and the cats, you know? So, and we don't know how big it'll go or how small it'll go. You just don't know. I wish I had answers, but, yeah.
Any other discussion? So it sounds like we're moving forward with the attorney compiling the couple here that we have and drafting an ordinance.
Do we have a chicken working group or something? To work
It's,
on this?
it's you.
Let's get
No,
going.
I'm just kidding.
The attorney.
Just kidding.
Well, I think with the couple that we have here and some of the verbiage that we've talked about, is there a motion then to allow the attorney to start drafting an ordinance on combining the couple that we discussed?
I'll make a motion for the attorney to start combining and drafting out an ordinance.
Is there a second? The motion on the floor by Councilor Julie, supported by Councilor Morris. Any other discussion?
I'd like to say something on
Councilor Florian, please.
it. Well, in response to the meeting, we talked about zoning meeting, I like what the red one does, I'd like to go beyond that. Like we talked about lots, I have 6 lots, 3 of which I said would qualify for it. And if you break that down more, I pay tax on 2 separate lots, so I think it should set up, if we do it, that it'd be on one, personal residence, change the wording a little bit. Go, like you said, no roosters, no lambs, no small farms by any means. And I also like that I wouldn't necessarily say go as far as taking an electrical permit to have wiring, we can have it in the winter time, but have a qualified city employee come and look at it, so not extension cords and stuff, because there's a lot of people in town who can do their own wiring, just making sure it's a qualified individual that checks on it. That goes with the annual fees, the permitting, and if there's issues with people who have permits and Chief Whitney sees that the permit would be revocable, or maybe be checked on every year, not necessarily having a 2-year run. There's a couple loopholes in that Redmond one I see already that you could easily get around. But then again, the size of the lot is another issue where there's a lot of people who won't qualify for it. And then the number itself, they say 4 to 8 square feet per standard size chicken. So 4 by 8, 4 by 10. And if you have a permit for these chickens, if you want to use the meter reader or somebody who comes from town, you could have it where you have to have your permit posted either by the meter or on the chicken coop. I mean, there's a lot of things you do to clamp down on people trying to abuse the system. And then
That's a good idea.
I can't imagine there's probably maybe 30 or 40 households in town that will probably have the size, the desire, the will to do it properly. Like I said, we talked about some of this at the zoning meeting, but there's more I don't have notes right now, but I think it's a good idea, but needs a little bit more clarification beyond what Red Wing one has. I think the Grand Rapids was too open, too many liberties to take with that.
But I like it, like you said, for the resident, just per resident.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with, if your name is on that parcel to pay taxes, you don't get to have more because you have a house here and you're non-homesteading that garage across the street from you, you don't get to have it in two places. A little control, yeah. And I'm good with that, definitely.
Like I say, there's definitely room to add on to the Red Wing one, I think, to do it properly. Because I don't want funny farms everywhere around town and all kinds of wild animals either, so.
Yeah.
I like the posting of the permit.
It's something, I don't know if you guys can even you could do it, have the meter reader going through every house, checking on other things, I mean, does he check for building permits, are they posting if something's going on? Is that within the job description, or would you guys have to change that, or I don't know how all that would work through the actual council regulations.
Well, we're kind of getting off track with that, so we just want to stick to the chickens right now. So that's another discussion. Thank you, Matt. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I
Opposed? No. Roll call.
Counselor Mraz,
Yes.
Counselor Levine,
No.
Counselor Jiggery,
yes.
Counselor Thronson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Longston? Longston? And vote yes for Long.
Long? Yeah. Okay, completion of the deed and recordation with DEMCON on the land exchange.
Thank you, Mayor. So I handed out an email exchange before the meeting, and this kind of captures where we're at and what I think may be one of the remaining issues. So if you look on the second page, about halfway down, there's an email from Mr. Keegan at DEMCON. And if you look at the second paragraph of that email, the second full paragraph, they're inquiring about potentially including an additional parcel with the exchange that wasn't originally contemplated. And this email of May 26th is the first time that I was made aware that they may be looking for an additional parcel. So then if you go to page 5, you'll see what that additional parcel is. So page 5 should be a bit of a larger picture that takes up about almost the whole page. And you'll see there's a shaded green area that's just south of where the highway is. And if you follow that green, it's kind of a triangular piece. If you follow to the narrow piece, it connects to the next lot. That's what we agreed to exchange in the original, with the original plan. And they were asking for this contiguous piece that would allow them to have ownership all the way across the frontage of that highway right of way.
Say that again, no, Brian, because I thought it was just that top piece, like you said, when we started this.
So let me back up a little bit. So if you go to,
I'm on 5.
if you go to page 3, you'll see a depiction in green of what we've already agreed to swap. So that green portion shaded there, and then the more slight green shaded portion that runs down the right side, abutting Highway 571. That's what the city has agreed to exchange. If you flip to the next page, you'll see a photograph, the north side of the highway, the blue, the portion contained within the blue, that's what the city was set to receive in order to place the sign. And then if you flip to the next page, you'll see, there's a green shaded portion that's south of the highway. That's the additional piece that they're inquiring about. And it connects, from a west to east perspective on this photograph. It connects to what they're receiving as part of the initial trade.
Okay, I thought it was the square blue that is directly underneath it to the south.
Yeah.
And it isn't, it's to the west.
It's
Correct, so it would be the triangular piece.
And they're both that odd shaped
Yep.
swing. Yeah.
It's basically little bits that the city received, when, in a lawsuit that was way back when, in the court proceeding, so.
So to the north of that, on page 5, on 169, that triangle piece that is to the west of central entrance.
That would remain with the city.
Okay, because that's highlighted green, so I thought they wanted that.
Yep, but they only want the portion south of the highway.
Okay. So the city would keep everything on the north side.
of the highway, correct.
Yeah.
So the other issue that's been raised is, they've indicated that Demcon has indicated that they don't believe that the handwritten sketch that accompanied the deeds originally was completely accurate. There was a handwritten sketch, or a hand-drawn sketch that went along just for illustration purposes, but that would not be recorded as part of this transaction. Only the deed and the legal descriptions contained within the deed. I went through those legal descriptions again. I believe the legal descriptions to be an accurate representation of what's intended to be swapped. The secondary question becomes, would the city want to or have interest in spending the funds to have a professional depiction of those legal descriptions prepared? I'm not sure. I have a call in to Mr. Bill Keegan to discuss that issue, to see of what importance that illustration is to him. As I indicated, the critical piece is that the legal descriptions within the deeds reflect the accurate descriptions. And we've checked them 3 times.
Any other questions?
Councilor Levine? So the question is the council approving this additional property be transferred to Demcon? And will there be any costs incurred by the city because you've already prepared the deeds for the other parcels? Is this another deed?
Yeah, the preparation of that additional deed would actually be fairly simple.
Okay, so we're just looking for a motion to approve
Yeah, it's
transferring the other
It-
parcel.
it's a question posed to the council is whether there's interest in transferring that piece.
And is that part of their plan, that they need that?
They kind of mentioned it as an aside. Basically, we had struck the original deal, and then, like I said, in that May 26th email, they came back and said, hey, what about this other piece too? So it's an addition to what was originally agreed.
So what is the full amount of the land that we're receiving compared to what they're asking?
I don't have the acreage.
Oh,
Because
okay.
the acreage I can't grab the acreage quick from the Land Explorer because we're dividing parcels.
'Cause I'm kind of curious on that, but I don't know.
Demcon-
We're never gonna use that.
It's considerably more,
Right.
but it's useless, I think.
And aren't they considering some type of expansion? So is there a motion then to approve the additional transfer?
I'll make a motion to approve the additional transfer to Demcon. And do you have a parcel number? Do you want do you have that, Beth, or I mean, I can't see it all on here.
It would be property,
It's kind of
yeah, it is,
420 or something. I don't know what it says there, but
so essentially we could do this, if the council wants to pass a motion that expresses your intent as it relates to the parcel of land requested as an addition to the exchange, I will bring back because it's a land exchange, it would have to be by a resolution. The resolution that comes back will include the parcel ID and description.
Okay.
But this way I could go to them and say that the council is in agreement with that exchange, we'll do the paperwork.
Are you in agreement with that then?
Mhm.
Is there support?
Support it.
We have a motion by Councilor Johnson, supported by Councilor Baker to approve the potential transfer pending the resolution and parcel code. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
So we are down to 8.2. Keewatin American Legion request to block off the 200 block on First Street North for the annual summer street dance and car show to be held on Saturday, August 26, 2023. Randy Nash is here if anyone has any questions pertaining to that.
It's not one block, it's 2 blocks. Our show will be in front of
Oh.
the church.
So 2 blocks, okay.
Might just been a miscommunication in the request.
I'll make a motion to, that's the annual thing that gets done, so.
Just make you guys aware, we get the bandstand.
Okay,
The last
is
4 years,
there
we've had the
something
bandstand.
submitted in writing regarding this?
Yes, the request. No, so there's not a letter, it was just a request to be on the agenda for this.
Oh.
In an email or, oh, it's not in
He
here.
just, he came into the office and requested it. I did not include the request in here.
Okay. So there's more to this than just blocking the street. So you want the bandstand?
So the last 4 years, we've had bands. They put it on John Otto's property. That being big tournaments, which we're not doing this year, we're doing, they hired a axe throwing outfit coming. Car show. We're doing, smoked pig instead of ribs. We're gonna do that behind the Legion, throwing smokers. We're talking about bringing in kids' games this year, somewhere on the street to get the kids in the town more involved. And possibly a craft show at the community center that I've been working with Beth and Billy on. So it's just as big, just a couple different events.
What's the time?
No, it's not in
Yeah,
there.
there's no time.
Usually it ended even before dark.
The music is gonna start at 4. It'll be the local amateur artists 4 to 5, and I think, once it was 5 to 9, 5 to 8. Janago was gonna play.
What time is the car show?
It'll be during the music. So there's,
So it's not till later in the afternoon? Everything will be later?
I would say that we wouldn't need to start closing the street down to like noon, 1 o'clock.
Well, what if there's already cars there? That's the problem.
It's not like we travel in there and not let them all.
If
We're pretty flexible, we've done it in the past.
We had-
I don't think that's what you're talking about, yeah.
It did not get towed, so.
I mean, we're not that big if somebody's parked there, we just don't want people driving through once the event starts. If somebody's already parked there, we just let them all pass.
Okay.
It's never really been an issue.
I just remember this being like a family oriented.
Yeah,
And it started with the 100th anniversary of the Legion.
Yeah.
It always ended, so like we never had extra guys working or anything.
Yeah, we shouldn't really need extra people. It's just open to,
Oh, she just played like, this is her, kid, like,
no, it's a bad.
which is bad. Yeah, they were required extra enforcement and overtime, so it was done at 6 or 7. Well, I don't know.
It's great in that time frame. Probably before dark, because the kids start, 9, 10 o'clock. On August, maybe.
Yeah, August.
Earlier than that.
They would run 9 in August, it's a little bit August.
I have no issues, I just, we just need time to sit up here now.
Once the flyers are ready, I would like to see one so we all understand for
Well, I
sure.
didn't want to make flyers without permission.
Yeah, no, that's why I said once the flyers are done. I
There
would
is a
like-
big car show in Kelly Met, 30 of the day, I think 10 to 3.
Oh.
It's kids in cars in the park for their library. We don't want to compete, so we're possibly moving the car show later during.
That's the same day, I forgot about that.
So, or,
So basically,
Get permission.
the additional
And then bring back the flyer.
would be the bandstand use and blocking off the 100 block and the 200 block.
If the car show don't happen, we won't block off.
The other,
block.
okay.
We haven't, I think, entertained car show until I got permission. Or I make the flyers to tear them down.
And then the street blockades they'll need.
Okay, Counselor Johnson, would you make the motion then? With the addendums, is there support?
I'll support it.
So there's a motion by Counselor Johnson, supported by Counselor Jiggery to approve blocking off the 100 and 200 block First Street North and allowing them to use the bandstand for the end of summer street dance car show on Saturday, August 26th, 2023, and we'll determine the time to be determined.
So just have Wade bring it back
Yes.
the times so that we can hammer it out. We don't need to bring necessarily another next council meeting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item is the Boy Scout cabin deck, safety of the current decking. I think we've talked about this before, that we wanted it at least roped off or something so people.
Yep, that's what I
could not-
brought this. It's
Okay,
been talked about several times.
so.
And it had the stuff up there. And then I don't know why it got taken down last fall.
Okay,
For some reason, I'm not sure what happened there.
okay, I don't know. But yeah, I remember we did talk about it, so, can we make a directive to the Public Works Director to put back the, whatever he had there to block off.
Caution tape, that's
Caution
what it
tape
was.
and block off the deck. At the log cabin.
Sounds good.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion by Council Jiggery, supported by Council Morris to have Public Works Director, put safety caution tape around the Boy Scout cabin deck. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Baseball field and softball field, highest best use by Council Jiggery.
So I have a little running list of things that I'm interested in as of late, but, I think we've talked about this before. The use of the baseball fields, it isn't really happening right now. And so it doesn't have to be discussed today, but I just want to plant the seed that we should start having conversations about how we want to utilize that space. Obviously we have beautiful fields that they're just sitting there. So whether it's like advertising that, hey, come over here and use our fields, like charge whatever it may be, I just think it's a shame that they're just sitting there, not utilized.
And they
keep-
have to be upkept too. which
Yeah,
is
and they're
a lot of
mowing them
time
and,
consuming.
I mean, it's, the street crew is taking care of it and doing but we could be generating some revenue by using the fields. And I know the T-ball, I think the little kids are using them a little bit, but, not nearly as much as they should be used. So, and I know we talked about before about advertising. I don't remember when, but,
I don't
and the baseball season is coming to an end, already. And so, like I said, maybe conversation for another day, but we
Next
can,
year.
yeah, but let's start planning earlier. And then nailing down some ideas.
Pickleball court.
They're doing one in Hibbing.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they're making one at
I
the
didn't
Bennett
know
Park.
that.
So yeah, so maybe we can just, start to do that and then loop into that conversation as well. I was thinking, like Susan, you have that buildings list there, like we've talked about the concession stands, and I think all of that goes into one conversation,
And I think we should add this to the list of old business that we've been compiling. And if you could email that to everybody, so we know that, with all the old topics. Things we've talked about. Thank you. Let's see, we have one other under consent agenda. Sorry, I missed that. We'll call it 8.5, and it is have a request for Devin Ford from the police department to attend the EMR refresher in Nashua, cost of $225 on August 23rd, September 13th, and September 27th. Can I motion for that?
I'll make a motion to support Devin to go to the training.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Councilor Fountain, supported by Councilor Morris. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Can I give you a quick, when we were talking about training, that DMT stuff I had you guys approve, where the jail was forcing us to be DMT operators. And we all have to go to the training in the metro. It got approved in the last meeting. The sheriff informed me today that they will now be funded by the DOC to be fully staffed to be DMT operators anymore. So I'm putting in a refund for all that training. So that'd be a nice savings, because I did not want to pay for that or would.
Okay, thank you.
That's 4,000 or something, huh?
Yeah, it's expensive.
Mhm.
Okay, department head reports. Please Chief Whitney on the Blight update.
Take it all out of hand, though.
Yep.
Read it, any questions? Having some good success. Still a little bit of work to do, but nothing horrible beyond, Carissa and Matt is actually, after doing the abatement thing, has shown some decent progress. And I spoke to her, the house owner on Monday, that you can keep going, or we're gonna come in, so. Beyond that one, some really, a couple cars around town. Good success this week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the report. How about, on the glacier, I guess? Are we waiting on that for the squatters areas or what? What are we doing?
I've had assurance that will be gone by the end of the summer,
Okay,
so it's kind of a little bit around, but
yeah.
I kind of need to know a little bit on some
Right.
things too, but,
Okay.
I've had verbal confirmation that we're taking care of, so. We'll bug them again in another few weeks here, kind of the first of August.
Sounds good. Okay, any other department head reports? Okay. Council reports. Anybody have a council report you'd like to give? Anything, library? We had a planning and zoning meeting on Monday. There is an opening for the remainder of the 3-year term ending December 31st, 2025. We meet the first Mondays of the month at 5 p.m. So if anybody's interested, submit an application to the clerk's office for that position. And just an update on the 4th of July. Everything went good. We didn't hear any complaints of anything. Everyone was like the band and the fireworks were awesome. And just want to thank all the volunteers and the donators that helped out. It was a great event, and hopefully we'll continue this moving forward. We're starting planning already for next year, so if anybody has suggestions, let anybody on the council know or the clerk's office, and we'll take them into consideration. If there's nothing else on the agenda, anybody have anything else? We'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 5:28.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Your support?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye. Is it 6:20?
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Well, I was looking at it wrong.